Welcome into a special edition of Rebound Off the Net as we preview the Southwest Kansas Storm's 2025 season. I'm your host, Joshua Cox. The Storm will compete in the Central Division with the Salina Liberty and Corpus Christi Trojans. The Storm made the quarterfinals of the AFL playoffs last season and look to take the next step forward in 2025. Here to help us preview the Storm is second-year head coach Gary Thomas. Coach, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You're coming off a playoff performance last season. How has last season been for you there in Dodge City?
It's been good. Got a chance to, get with the owners, a month or so after the season and just kind of reflect on the whole bit and have them, pick my brain a little bit on, how I thought things could have gone different or better and let them kind of have a chance to kind of reassess, with what they were getting from the new brass, of the league and, put a budget together that, now gives us, kind of a realistic way to get to the end point and kind of run this like a viable business. Last year everything got so crazy. Everybody just went into survival mode, and all teams, the league, everybody, but, internally and, us having to just kind of reassess, how do we get through this? How do we weather it? And our owners, jumped on a couple grenades just to get us through. And we jumped on plenty of grenades for, for them and for the league and making it just through, I think this year we're all, a lot more prepared mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, whatever, of kind of how to attack this thing. And I think with the people behind the scenes at the top of the league, I feel pretty good about where we're at and feel pretty good about where it could go. Yeah.
What are you most excited about the AF1 and kind of what's your thoughts on kind of the state of the league as we move forward?
The organization's been great. And when I say organization, I don't mean our franchise organization. I just mean the organizational stuff coming from the top of the league, just having the ability to get on a call with Gary Compton every Tuesday, and we have a Zoom with all the head coaches, and, information gets, disseminated down to us, and, the owners have a call kind of after ours, and then getting with our owners and being able to get information from them on what's happening in other avenues. And they've just been very good. And I think, not having, last year learning, how many promises the league had made to teams and how, how many under the table deals they were cutting just to, just kick the can down the road. And this year it's just kind of all on the organizations to, there's no promises, there's no hand holding. It's this is what we need, this is what we expect, this is how you're going to do it, and this is what we demand out of you, and if you don't want to be a part of it, then get out of here, and we'll move on with the strong and the organized and the people that are serious about building this thing the right way. And I think that's been the best part, so far is allowing each franchise to run as a business and know, there's not going to be any hand holding, there's not going to be any lifelines. It's your job to, set up a salary cap and, pay your coaches accordingly. And, this is how much footballs are going to cost. This is how much uniforms are going to cost. These are non-negotiable items. And if you can't afford them, maybe this isn't the league for you. And just getting to a point where it seems like, there's people at the top that know what they're doing, and it seems to me that the teams that are still involved, have met the demands of what the league's going to require to help us feel pretty good that we're going to be able to all get this through this thing together.
You're going to be in the Central Division this year with Salina and Corpus Christi. I know Wichita kind of dropped out. What are your thoughts on kind of your division there?
It seems pretty good. Again, Salina, I don't worry too much about them. They're just going to be good, so you don't really have to worry about what they're doing along the way. Just know that when you meet them, they're probably going to have good players and they're going to be well coached, and and they're a pretty sound group over. Their sample size is pretty big, so you can go back as many years as you want and pick whichever league you want, and you're going to run into a pretty good Salina team. So, Corpus, we haven't really had, we haven't crossed paths too much, really too much. But just looking at some of the guys they've signed, seem like they've put together a pretty good roster in a short amount of time. I see the names come through and in the signings and stuff like that. I don't know all of them. I know a few of them, but the ones that I know are good players, and I think they'll. Again, the difference is they're not necessarily a true expansion team. They're just switching leagues. They've been down the road before. They've done this in a different setup, so they kind of know what to expect. How to navigate their own thing, So I do have a lot of confidence in their ability to put together a good product and kind of survive this thing as well, because they've managed to do it, before here. So, I'm excited to see what happens. A little weird that we've got, the division with 3 teams. I don't even know how. I know how it's going to work. I've seen the schedule, but differently than. I guess the only questions I have is, the playoff aspect of it. If we're taking, it's pretty cut and dry. You're going with, winning percentages on, who gets in from each division, and then you're going to go winning percentages on the at-large bids and stuff like that for the playoffs. So I haven't really worried about, does that give us an easier path or a harder path? But if it's on winning percentages, it honestly probably doesn't matter. We play each of them, Salina and Corpus Christi, 3 times each, so. It'll all work out in the wash, I suppose. So, not something that necessarily we need to, probably worry ourselves about. We got to worry about them when they're on the schedule that week, and give them the best version of ourselves, and see how it all plays out.
Yeah, outside your division, I know you got Orlando at home, and then you get to go to Albany and Billings. What are your thoughts on kind of the outside of the conference schedule? You got some pretty tough games there.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't paid much attention to other teams, schedules on the big picture. I imagine everybody's got the same problems, And you swap out Orlando for Nashville. I mean, same thing. You swap out somebody for, we play Arizona. You swap them out for Washington or Oregon. There's no easy path, I don't think. Yes, we got Billings. But if you geographically redid the whole thing, you could very easily put Billings in our division, and then we'd have to play them 3 times instead of once. So I think you're just splitting hairs at that point if you're worried about how hard or easy your non-conference schedule is. The only blip on the radar I see for us is week 1 we've got Orlando here, and that week 0. That's not not a concern. We both come into camp at the same time. We have the same amount of time to prepare. So I don't think that's going to be you can't say it's a hindrance or a help on helping you win or lose the game. It's just going to be what it's going to be. But week 2 we go to Corpus on a Sunday, a Sunday night game. So we're probably not going to get back here to Dodge until Monday at noon, maybe, I would guess. And then that Albany game is a Friday night. So Monday is going to be almost a lost day for us from a travel standpoint. And then we're flying to Albany on Thursday of that same week. So we've got a 48-hour window to basically, we're going to play 2 games in 5 days, with 2 prep days and 2 travel days on each end of that. After that, it really kind of balances out. I think we've got a Sunday game following that trip, and then I think we have a bye week maybe following that. So we'll get a chance to kind of get our feet back underneath us. But I'm not worried about week 1. It's it's a quality opponent. It's a home game. It is what it is. But we've got to navigate that week 2, week 3 challenge of just staying healthy and staying mentally in the fight. And it, honestly, it kind of a little bit reminiscent of Albany last year. Is I know we take a lot of heat, for how the Albany game played out. Last year we lose 5 games basically on the last possession of the game. of our 6 losses. The one was the blowout at Albany, but I mean nobody likes to talk about that. We went there on 48 hours notice. We weren't even supposed to play them. We jumped on a grenade for the league because someone else backed out, and we had just played a Monday night game in Wichita and then jumped on an airplane a couple of days later. We didn't even know that we were playing Albany until Wednesday. Not to mention Michael Lawson got hurt in that Monday night game, and we lost him for 4 weeks, and we were still playing Ironman, and we ended up losing 2 guys in game pretty early, and that was Matt Struck's basically first snaps playing quarterback in this league. We're in that game, and we had a lot of things that were going on right there, a lot of moving parts that people don't, take into account, and we just, we ran out. We had DeQuan Bailey Brown, who never played DB in his entire life, playing high motion against Darius Prince. I mean, what a game to go ahead and see if you can play back there, and so we took it on the chin. We don't hide from that. We own every bit of that. We were there, we played the game, but there was a lot of things that were set up for us to not be successful in that game, and we're not making excuses. They kicked our butt fair and square, and they were a solid football team. They really were. But that wasn't the best version of us, that we put forward, throughout the year, and but we're going back there, and we're going back there on 4 days' notice with 2 travel days and 2 practice days, and the challenge, the biggest thing that we learned last year, honestly, was in going to Albany is obviously it's a long trip, and you can't use that as a crutch either, but we had a lot of guys cramp up in that game. If you go back and watch it, we lost 2 or 3 guys that were cramping up, and it wasn't until I really understood. We left almost 2 days before, because we flew out of because it was short notice again. They bought plane tickets on 72 hours notice. Again, jumping on grenades for to make the thing go down the road, but we had to fly out of Denver, so we drove through the middle of the night. We didn't sleep the night before. We just drove on the bus, left at 11 p.m., got to Denver at 5 a.m., got on an 8 a.m. flight, flew all the way to Albany, but we had to fly into LaGuardia. We couldn't fly into Albany. So then we had to rent vehicles, drive to Albany, which was a 4-hour drive, which they told us it was 2.5. It ended up being 4. But we never stopped. Our guys weren't drinking water. We didn't get any treatment, that day before. We didn't practice for a full almost 48 hours before the game, because it took us like 20, I think door to door, it was like 27 hours for us to get there, just to get to Albany. So, this year we're flying, right into Albany, I think, and so there'll be a lot of those things will be not problems necessarily this year, but it is still a short turnaround and a short time frame. So those are the things we just got to stay mentally sharp, and God willing, we stay healthy, going into the game, and have the ability to put the best version of us on the football field that day.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe last season was your first as an arena coach. You've been a college coach for a long time. What did you learn last season? Are you more prepared for year 2 as an arena coach?
Yeah, I would hope so. Certainly hope so. We wasted, I think, a lot of time offensively specifically. I'll put this on me as an offensive guy, but what we were doing at the end of the year was not a reflection of a lot of stuff that we worked on in camp. That we just kind of, as the season went on, we just felt like we had too much in, and we weren't good at necessarily the things that we had been working on, because there was too many moving parts, and so we really scaled back and dialed in to just kind of focus on focus on the 80% of what we were doing the most, and looking at teams that we were playing, going, wow, we're doing way more than they are, and we're not getting nearly the same result at times. So are we overthinking this? Are we is it overkill? And it was. So I think this year, special teams I thought were great. Other than a couple blips in the West Texas game, I thought we played as good as the people we were playing against on special teams. DeQuan Bailey Brown was phenomenal for us in the kick return game. We generally had good coverage. Once we switched footballs, Dylan Burkhart was as good as any kicker in the league as far as getting deuces and hitting the net on kickoffs. defensively, we adapted to our personnel towards the end of the year. We didn't change anything defensively. We just it was really offensively, and I think mostly on myself, that I was over prepared for the occasion, really. And this year, I think we're much more dialed in on what we need to do early. Camp being essentially 10 days, really, of making sure that we're efficient in our installation, in our teaching, and in our execution. And I think we'll benefit from that a lot this year, in just being able to be competitive early.
We're going to get in the roster in detail in a second. We'll go position by position. But you look at building your roster. What have you done differently this year that maybe you didn't do last year? How have you went about building your roster?
Well, last year you were building for Ironman. That's the biggest thing for everybody. I will say I give us a lot of credit in that if you look at the team that we put out there versus Salina in the playoffs, was almost identical to the roster that we put out there in game one versus Salina. We were one of the few teams that when the rules changed, we didn't adjust our roster. We had 3 O-linemen that had been O-linemen their entire life. We had 3 defensive linemen that had been defensive linemen their whole life, but they were, playing Ironman up to that point. So we kind of just divided them and kept on going down the road. But I think a lot of teams retooled when the rules changed. We were playing with bigger defensive linemen that were built for maybe the outdoor game or the ability to come over and play O-line. Outside of Marquise, who was just an absolute freak show. We probably could have been a better version of ourselves at the end had we retooled and brought in some pass rushers to get more pressure on the quarterback, because that's really what this game is about. Is do you have a quarterback? Can you get theirs, and can you protect yours? That's the game. So we kind of thought it was important to be loyal to the guys that were loyal to us and believed in it and stuck around, and guys that had survived 10 weeks and all of the curveballs and changes, and 1 week we prepared for 3 different teams, and then you're going to change the rules 2 weeks later, and I got to cut a guy because I can get a better pass rusher. That seems crazy to me. So we didn't want to do that, we were the best version that we could be there at the end. But we stuck loyal to the original roster that we brought in. This year you can, essentially now we've got focus, we've got direction, from the top, and we can recruit to what the rules say that you can do and build it the way that you want. So I feel pretty good, that we've built it to the specs of accomplishing the things that we want to be able to accomplish. I think we're talented. There's not a position that I don't feel that we're not better than we were last year, other than maybe 2 players. I think every other position we've upgraded in talent, maybe 3 guys, but we've upgraded in talent. I think we're a better team across the board than we were last year, and I feel pretty confident about that.
Okay, we're going to go by position here. We're going to start at the quarterback position. You got a really talented quarterback room, maybe one of the most talented ones in the league, with Matt Struck, Jalen Morton. Tell us a little about this quarterback, and Montel Cozart. Tell us a little about this quarterback room.
So I think you've got some outdated information too. So Matt Struck is going to the X League in Japan. He has signed a pretty lucrative contract over there. But the 3 quarterbacks we're bringing in are Montel Cozart, who obviously played 3 years in the CFL, played 2 years in the UFL, USFL merger, but he was with Houston and Birmingham. But he has 5 years of professional experience. We signed Jalen Morton, who played in the NFL, played in the CFL, and played in the UFL, and has a UFL championship. And he's Maddish, and maybe a click even better in some of his measurables. He's 6'4", he's 225, he's crazy athletic, he's got a cannon on him. And then Jarris Grissom is a guy that don't discount him. He still was a quarterback at 3 different Division I schools, and we kind of have a vision for Jarris in our operation of being able to, use him kind of as a Swiss Army knife and bring a whole bunch of variety to his game, assuming that it kind of plays out that way. But I agree with you. I put Matt in or out of the equation. I like our quarterback room versus anybody. We may not have indoor experience, but last year we didn't either, and I feel like by the end of the year we were playing some pretty good football with Matt behind there, and I think we'll be able to duplicate that this year with that group.
Let's go to the fullback position. I know you got Logan Wright listed on the roster. Tell us about that fullback position, how you plan to use that, maybe some guys you plan to put back there.
Yeah, so I mean, we're no secret. We play with a traditional running back, and I've actually seen some other team. Salina kind of plays like us. I don't know if they will this year or not. We'll find that out as we go. But I've seen some other people signing quote unquote running backs. So I don't know if they plan to play kind of our style or if they're going to play traditional or not. But Logan Wright's 2-time All Sun Belt, rushed for 2,200 yards, big. 6'1", 235, big downhill guy. Vince DeLeo was an absolute stud for us, and led the league in rushing, but he did a really good job for being a guy that hadn't played running back since high school. But the thing that if there was a knock on him, he missed a couple holes where a natural running back that has played his entire career back there would have seen some things and said, what, here we go. I'm just going to grind this hole and I'm going to get my 2 and 3 yard gain like this was designed. Whereas Vince, kind of got into a rut of trying to hit the home run and maybe passed up on some yards that would have put us into some, 2nd and 7s and even 3rd and 2s and better situations. So I think Logan will be able to do that. We also signed Darius Morrison, who played at Missouri Baptist. Again, he's, 6'2", 225. He's got some documented times that are out there, 4.4, 4.5, and I think they're about the same height, but Logan's built a little more stout. Darius is more kind of longer and muscular, and we'll see which one gives us the best chance to win through camp. But those guys will be battling out for that position for sure.
Let's go to wide receiver Daquan Bailey-Brown, Eugene Minister Jr., Todd Athey, Shiloh Flanagan, Emory Simmons. Tell us about that wide receiver room.
So again, give you updated information. Todd is retiring. He has a little baby on the way. He got married right after our season. His fiance was actually here with him while he was here. Great family. Todd's one of my favorite people on this earth, but he's got a business that he runs back home, and he's got a successful contract coming up, and so he, kind of life forced him to kind of go that direction, and Eugene actually just got hired as the wide receiver coach at a D2 school. He was a high school coach last year. They won the state championship down in Alabama, and he got a unique opportunity to get a full-time job, coaching football, and it was something that he just couldn't turn down. He's a guy sitting here with a master's degree, and he's not using it. He's playing indoor football. So those two guys are not actually coming back. But our receiver room, I think, honestly, is still very good. Daquan is back. Charles Hall is a guy that we signed, played in the XFL for the Arlington Renegades. Emory Simmons we signed the other day. Emory started for 2 years at North Carolina, and then started a year at Indiana, and then finished at Utah. He, I think, has a chance to be really, really special in this league. We signed Demarius Washington, who, kind of don't have to talk too much about him. His accomplishments are well documented. And we signed a young man named Deshaun Young. Deshaun will be a rookie in this league, but he was in rookie minicamp with the Saints last year. So we're supremely talented, arguably much faster than we were last year. Eugene was good at what Eugene was good at. But we will put a more lethal weapon on the field in his spot. Chris Platt did a great job for us last year. Chris was playing. He was nursing an injury most of the year because he got injured pretty early on, and he didn't play in our first 3 games maybe. And then when he kind of came back and hit the ground running, we were a better offense because he's just such a smart football player. But we will put a more athletic person out there this year. I think our receiving room will be dangerous. We're fast. We're pretty long. Demarius kind of rounds the group out by being, smart a guy willing to, kind of lend his knowledge and teach the younger guys on some of the finer points of how he plays his game. But at the end of the day, he's still tall, athletic, smart, and we can get a lot of mileage out of guys like that. So I'm excited about the group that we're going to put out there, even though it's changed a little bit here in the last month or so.
Yeah, let's go to the lines, O-line, D-line, kind of give us a take of that.
Yeah, we're. Honestly, we're going to operate independently of each other. So we're not necessarily planning on doing too much Ironman. We're going to try to function as an offense and a defense. We will have a little bit of crossover. So we don't really consider them O-line, D-line guys. We're signing offensive linemen and defensive linemen, and we're going to try to operate as such. I think it's going to make us more efficient in practice and maybe give us a chance to broaden our schemes a little bit, so where we're not under that constant time crunch. When you're trying to service both sides and making, okay, we're offensive priority now, and when you're only spending half as much time on offense, there's only so much that you can do. So. From an offensive line standpoint, we've been scrambling here a little bit here late, but we just until I get, I know they're signed because I've talked to people at the top of the league, but until I get those confirmations back, I can't release them. But we've got a Big 12 starter on the offensive line coming in that played at Oklahoma, and I think he'll be outstanding. I'd be shocked if he didn't start at left guard for us. We've got an IFL player that started last year for a team, and he's flipped, and he's coming over, and big body guy, 6'6", 335, violent, played in the MAC. We've got Alex Hale. I can't tell you about him. Super athletic. He was back in the old FCF and was really light. I watched his film, and I was like, God, he's really light, but crazy athletic. I'm intrigued. Because in our style, we can't play with just a big body guy that just kind of plugs up the A gap. We play a lot of one-on-one up front, so our guy's got to kind of be able to hold his own, but he's put on some weight. He I think would have had a good chance to start last year for Philadelphia. The Philadelphia sold before that whole debacle happened. So we've got him signed. I think he's going to be pretty good. We've got an NAL guy that's flipped again until his contract's proved. Can't talk too much about it, but he started every game for a team last year in that league. We've got Sama. He played at University of Washington, then was signed with the Seattle Sea Dragons in the XFL. Big body guy, 6'4", 335. Violent, athletic. Retooling himself there. See if I'm forgetting anybody else. We've signed another guy. I don't have his contract back, but I feel like, again, I think we're a better version of ourselves almost at every single position up front. It's going to be new faces, but it's I think our body types are good. We're big. We're physical. I think our schemes aren't going to change much. Most people know what we're doing, so it's not much of a secret. But at the end of it, this game's was just having a conversation with a guy earlier, and some of these things carry over. But I used to tell our football teams in college, because we go from a 90-degree day to a 30-degree day around here pretty quickly, during outdoor football season. But I used to always give them a speech. I'd wait for that first real cold day when they didn't want to practice. But if you think about it, you put it in perspective, there's not a championship that's ever been won in major college football, essentially, or the NFL, that hasn't been won in some version of cold weather. And if you take yesterday as an example, both those teams battled some cold weather games to get where they got to. The second part of that is you can't win. I don't care how far you go back in major college football and NFL, and you can't, if you're not playing great defense, you're not going to win. And the third part of that is I get it. It's a throwing league. It's a throwing world, and the game has evolved. I get it, but no championship has been won. At some point in time, there becomes a time when everyone on earth knows that you need to run the football, and you're going to run the football, and you have to be able to run the football at that point in time. And this game is no different. It might be 85 to 90% pass, but at some point in time, whether you're inside the 5-yard line and that end zone gets real small, and especially the places with curved end zones, the run game does become a factor. So for us, those things still hold true other than the weather. We need to play great defense. We need to be able to play this game the way that it's played, like it's been played for the last 30 years. But at the end of the day, we need to be able to run the football when it matters. And we're going to make sure that the body types have the ability to do that for us, and that our schemes lend it where, we're not just throwing our guys to the lambs and trying to run into a 5-man box and we're just outnumbered at the point of attack all the time. So we've got to get a little creative in how we do it, because we are doing it a different way. So defensive line, I feel really good about that group too. We signed 3 DNs and we signed 3 D tackles. One of them's kind of a swing guy, but Robert Cooper's a guy that started 41 games at Florida State. You can go watch his film if you like. It's on YouTube, and he's throwing around SEC centers every which direction. Joe Golden is a guy that played at Oregon State, started for them the last 2 years, I think, on their defensive line. He's a swing guy, 6'4", 290, 285, can play in, can play nose, and I think he'll be really good. He's actually out of Colorado Springs, so he's not too far from here. And then Tavis is the guy that started at UNLV, and he's kind of a combo in between the two of them. Guy that kind of an outdoor 3 technique, big-bodied guy, 6'3", 6'4", about 315, can slant, can move, can displace the center a little bit, and gives us a good chance to win. The ends group, I think, are pretty good. Marjay Smith's the guy that played at Baylor and then finished at Stephen F. Austin. 6'5.5", really freaky, athletic, kind of like Marquise Lawson Greenwood was for us, like twitchy, crazy athletic. And the same with Jair Stevens. Jair's 6'4", 240, played at Lafayette, so he's really smart. Then grad transferred to Buffalo and played more of a linebacker position for them. I think he has a unique knack to rush the passer. Just the scheme in Buffalo didn't lend itself for him to do that. That's just not what they asked him to do, and I think he's the guy that can be really good in this league. And then we've got Lavelle Spruce. He's actually played in that 6-man league last year. He's a guy that can play in, can play linebacker, has a little bit of diversity. Just a physical freak of nature, can run around. I think he can put his hand on the ground. But I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up at that MAC linebacker position when it all shook out. So I feel pretty good about that group.
Let's go to defensive back. Brian Hughes, Rondell Messer, Rodney Allen, Michael Lawson. Tell us a little about the defensive back room.
That one I'm really intrigued by, to be honest with you. I thought our secondary did a good job last year for literally not one guy that had ever played. And I think we've gotten better in a lot of areas. I'd be shocked if Michael Lawson wasn't a better version of himself, with a year under his belt, coming in healthy. He got banged up, in that Wichita game with a kind of a head injury, and then he got banged up at the end of the year and sprained his ankle, and then we lost him in the playoff game, like on the 3rd play of the game. And that didn't help. We ended up playing very poorly in that first half and then shut him out in the second half, essentially, other than the fumble other than the bad snap that lost us the game where they scored a defensive touchdown. But the point is, I'd be shocked if he wasn't our high safety cover guy. Brian Hughes is a guy that played in the CFL last year, and then he ended up starting in the IFL after he got released. And we got him over here. He's 6'3", 190 pounds, athletic, long, physical. We signed, D-Trey Matthews, who was with Salina the last few years. Also, 6'3", a lot of experience, similar to Demarius. I think a guy that steps in right now, and there's not one thing that you can throw at him that he hasn't seen or done before. So I think he helps kind of round out the group. But the other guys, Rodney Allen played in the XFL, played for the Frisco Fighters, I think last year, the year before. Micah Smith, same thing, played at Arkansas. SEC guy, also played for Frisco last year, and he was their kind of high motion cover guy, I think, before he kind of got a little bit of an injury and got tweaked up. And then we've got some young guys, that are going to battle to, we just don't know what they're capable of. They're rookies, and we'll see how that all shakes out in camp. But, I feel pretty good about, that what the anticipated first group that we might put out in the field. 2 6'3" corners and a guy that was voted first team all AFL. I can't be happier if we can stay healthy through camp, and we'll be long, we'll be pretty fast, and hopefully a year smarter than we were last year.
Yeah, let's go last position, kicker. Dylan Burkhardt, tell us about your kicker.
Dylan's Dylan, man. Dylan's a Dodge City kid. Played for me in college. Was a first-team All-American. Went on to kick Southeast Louisiana. He's a guy that he also teaches. Not necessarily here. He's going to commute a little bit. But he's he's got a full-time job. But he's still in shape. And there was a crossroads last year about week 4, and I'll tell you a little bit of story. We were kicking that rubber basketball that the league produced last year, and he couldn't kick it to save his life. And we were watching a game. We were getting ready to play. I think it was Albany, and Albany and maybe Nashville. We were watching that film or somebody, and he's watching these guys that are hitting it 3/4 up the way off the net, and he literally came to me and he was like, "Coach, I'm watching their kickers. Like, why don't you go get one of those guys? Like, I don't even know where the ball's going at this point." And I said, "Well, I'm not necessarily ready to give up on you because I know what you're capable of." And I said, the second part of that is those guys don't just grow on trees either. I can't just go get one of those guys. There's only so many of those guys to go around. But I said, let's power through this and let's see where it goes. And so we go to Albany, that game that we had talked about earlier, and we go there for pregame, and they're like, "Hey, we got league approval to kick these leather footballs, but we can only play with them if you agree to play with them." Well, they didn't say that. They go, "You have your option. You can play with the old ball, or you can play with this ball." And I'm like, "Well, the old ball sucks, so we're not doing that. We're going to play this leather ball." So they were like, "Okay, we've got balls for you for your quarterbacks to warm up and all that kind of stuff," because we figured you probably didn't bring any. And I was like, "That's awesome." And so I give 2 to the kicker, and I give a couple to the quarterbacks, and the quarterbacks' eyes light up, and they're like, "Finally, a ball that I know where it's going to go, and I can control it." And so Dylan goes out there, and he's warming up, and he hits his first ball, and it goes right through the upright on the kickoff for a deuce as he's warming up. And I turn around, and he's like, apparently it was the ball. And ever since that day, so we called the league, and we're like, "Wait a minute, we just played with leather footballs. Can we do that?" And they're like, "Yeah, of course you can." So we went out and we bought leather footballs. Our ownership, just went to, Dick's Sporting Goods and got a couple, GSTs, and then we spent a couple weeks breaking them in. And Dylan was great after that. I think he had a deuce in probably, 3 or 4 of our last 5 games, and he was hitting, about halfway up the net on kickoffs. Depending on the facility, there's some facilities you got to kind of finagle a little bit because we got some lower ceilings, but. He, other than a couple blocks, he was perfect on extra points and field goals, and so I know he'll be a good version of himself. And now that we've got a real football and it's already been produced, we already have like one of them, and we can get him broke in. I have no doubt that he'll be above, at least as good as what we need to be able to put ourselves in position to win football games.
Do you like the new footballs? I know they just come out in the last couple of days here.
I do. I was one of the guys that put them on those guys. Big Game USA they produced our footballs in junior college at the college level. So I've known, those guys, those sales reps that were there in Chicago. Matter of fact, I gave them his number to call him so they could produce a football for the league if they wanted to go that direction. And, when you get a chance to talk to those guys, and when they pitched me 10 years ago, when our league back then went to that ball. But, what the general public doesn't know is there's only like 2 manufacturers of footballs in the entire United States. So just because it has an Adidas or a Nike logo on it doesn't mean they're producing it. It's the same football as somebody else, just got a different stamp on it. So they're one of the main producers of footballs. I think they have the entire state of Texas. They have all the junior colleges in California. They have like half the division NCAA, Division I teams is that football. So we're, it's comical you see when some of those releases, and there's some people out there that hate this league so much that no matter what, they could be giving gold bars to every fan, and people would still say, "Oh, this league's a joke and it's never going to survive," and they don't know what they're doing. But somebody was like laughing at the football, and I'm like, it's the same football. that they're playing with on television, like, you're an absolute moron if that's the hill that you're going to choose to die on. So it's a good quality football. It's what they're playing with outdoors. I see it's something that the league felt very strongly about, that they wanted to, play with the leather football and get back to some of the old days. It is an extra cost, though. I get it from that, but that was, again, I talked about at the beginning of, this is how we want it. This is what we're going to do. This is what the cost is going to be. You either make it work, or maybe this league isn't for you. I know from a quarterback standpoint, most of them prefer to throw a leather football, especially the ones that want to go back outdoors, and that's their goal. The other ball, honestly, the ball they throw in the IFL, it's a really forgiving football. The ball they used to throw in the CIF, it's not a bad football either. You don't have to be a great quarterback to throw a real catchable football with that. But I think the overall consensus, though, is everybody under the right circumstances would much prefer to throw a leather football. It's just going to take a little legwork on ours to make sure that they're all broken in. That's going to be the hard part. You can't just pull it out of the package and start kicking it around the yard and expect good results, and think that you're going to just drop dimes all over the place. So, but we'll handle that on our end. We'll get it figured out.
Last question for you. You took a step forward and made the playoffs last year. What's it going to take the next step forward and hoist the trophy at the end of the season for this team?
Consistency. We've kind of reevaluated everything that we did, last year to get to the point that we are today. And, we talked about how hard we made camp last year, and kind of running it more with an outdoor, mentality of toughness and all that kind of stuff. And we broke the guys down physically, mentally, pushed them to their limits. And what I think I learned was maybe that was too much. Maybe we didn't have fresh enough legs on game day. And I think our guys were tough as nails, but, we didn't win close games. Matter of fact, we lost more close. We hit a walk-off at Salina and played really well in some other games, but there were games that we legitimately had the ball last, down less than a score with a chance to win, and we did not. West Texas, we're on the 5-yard line with 2 snaps to win the game, and we don't get in. The Seattle game, the Washington, we've got the ball last with 8 seconds left. We were up 2 scores during that game, and we get beat on a Hail Mary, but we get 2 yards there and the game's over. We had a chance. The game was in our grasp to end it and not even give them the ball back, and we come up short on the 4th and 2. So all of those things, as I look at it and go, well, we did all of these things to build a tough football team, but we didn't win the game. So, toughness clearly wasn't our thing. I think we played tough, and I think our guys were tough, but it didn't. The end result was, we didn't win close football games. So, maybe we need to reevaluate everything that we're doing. And I do know, we talked about earlier, from an efficiency standpoint, we'll be so much better on our installs, offense and defense, as far as what we need versus what we don't need, and how much we need to go into that first game with, and making sure that we dot all of our I's and cross all of our T's. But this year I think just an entirely different mindset taken into camp, of making sure that we are we always. Our end goal was always to put the best version of ourselves on the football field every weekend, but I think we can manage to do that maybe this year in pushing the mental part of it even harder, and then maybe scaling back on some of the physical part of it during the week to make sure that our guys, feel confident in their heads that, that they're fully healthy and the best version of them can show up, and the thing that reigns true in all of football is, if guys are thinking, they're not playing fast. So we need to either teach it in a way that our guys aren't hesitating and they can go and just do their thing and play fast on game day in between the whistles, or we need to simplify what we're doing so that guys can just be the best version of themselves instead of trying to out X and O people. Just allow our athletes to shine and be the best versions of them, and let it play out that way. So we're going to try to find a happy medium there, but yeah, we did learn a lot and feel very confident going into camp this year on what what we have the ability to do from a staff standpoint. I'm really fired up about our staff too. I know we didn't cover that, and I know we got to wrap things up, but we got Coach Check back as our defensive coordinator, Coach Callahan's back as our secondary coach, Coach Gibson's back as our D-line coach, who does a phenomenal job, and we actually lost him for part of last year for about a month because he had to go work some camps. We got all that worked out this year, so now we have him for the duration. We hired an offensive line coach this year. We were supposed to have one, and then something happened, and we ended up losing him. So we kind of just fought our way through it and did without. But we have Marcos Gutierrez is now our offensive line coach. He played for me in college, but he's been high school offensive line coach here for the last 6 or 8 years, and so there's not a position on the field that we won't be better coached and better tended to than we were last year, and that will play, I think, a huge part of it as well. Is guys at this level have been coached their entire lives. It's not always about what happens during individual periods and some of the fixing some of the technique stuff, but the truth is, guys like people, they can, they like to have their position coach they can bounce ideas off of, and they're constantly getting feedback from an individual, whereas sometimes I was running the whole offense by myself last year just because of how it played out, and so there were some things that obviously I'd miss. I can only put my eyeballs in so many different places, and we would try to catch stuff on film and make corrections that way, but generally it's always better to get immediate feedback to guys in between snaps of hey, let's do this time, or let's fix that, or this is why this happened, and that way we don't screw the rep up 6 more times and then catch it on film after practice or the next day. We can get things corrected immediately and maybe get more quality reps throughout the day. So I feel really confident, in our roster and our ability to teach, in the individuals that will be doing the teaching, and just everything. I feel really pretty confident about where we're at as an operation.
Coach, I appreciate your time. We'll talk here down the road this season.
Sounds good. Appreciate you.